Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. And thank you for joining this webinar that we'll be talking about driving the future and aligning automotive innovation with the USCAR standards. And I'm Ravi Subramanyan. I'm the Director of Industry Solutions at HiveMQ. And I'm very, very glad to have Michael King, who's the co-founder of LHP Analytics and IoT, and is also the Chief Product Officer there at LHP Engineering. More importantly, he's been working very closely with the US car specifications, especially the US car 53, and how it kind of like impacts the automotive ecosystem. And we're going to be talking a lot about that. Michael, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ravi. So Michael King, like I said, co-founder at LHP. We're a engineering systems integrator located here in Indiana. Long career in automotive, aerospace, manufacturing, um, and for the past 5 or 6 years working with reps from Ford, GM, and Stellantis to roll out this new standard. And
Awesome.
excited to come and share with the group and hopefully give some information and answer some questions.
Yeah. I mean, we were thinking about who we need to bring in to talk about US car, and we couldn't think of anybody but Michael, given the breadth of knowledge that he has. But before we start, I just wanted to quickly kind of like talk about like some logistics here. So this session is being recorded, as you know, and we'll be sharing the recording on YouTube hopefully in a few days after this, and the slides will also be available as well. So please take it, and then if you don't get a chance to see it, please view it later. Please feel free to share with your friends and colleagues so that they can also benefit from this. With that, let's jump in here. Michael, take it away.
Okay, so great. And again, this is one of an initiative we've been working on for since 2018, 2019. Um, and it's one of those meetings you get called to. It's just like, okay, so we got a problem and we need some help. And really what's going on in the auto industry and industries pretty much around the world as folks are trying to implement smart manufacturing, high degree of automation and integration. Um, and again, the auto industry is probably one of the more progressive groups around smart manufacturing. However, a lot of the manufacturing systems, a lot of the equipment, embedded control systems, they've evolved over time, and they kind of are what they are. And anyone who's tried to connect to a few assets in the field knows it's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so the landscape, if you think about Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, the number of factories they have, the number of equipment they have, their supply base, that landscape is a mess. It's
It
just
is.
complex and it's delay. And even on their best day, they're being challenged to go even faster and faster and faster. And so um, at the root of the problem really is that machine communication. How does a Siemens controller work versus a Rockwell versus a Fanuc versus a Bradley? Um, Again, they just evolved as they evolved. Um, and so in order to achieve the goals of smart manufacturing at the automotive industry level, we needed a new standard,
Mm-hmm.
a standard that we can drive through the industry, that we can partner with the equipment providers to make native in the equipment. Um, one of these things that Ford couldn't solve it themselves, GM couldn't do it, Stellantis couldn't do it. It really took the industry coming together.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so that was the task is we need first, is there a standard out there that would work? And if not, do we need to create one? And we actually had to create our own standard that met the needs of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the USCAR
Yeah.
53 standard.
Right. And Michael, this is mainly for industrial data communication for manufacturing of vehicles, right? It's not for like the car-to-car communication or connected cars.
Well,
Is that?
yeah, in this first release, we had to keep it pretty tight
Mm-hmm.
on the scope and the you know the range.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about what these automakers are doing, of course, the vehicles in the factory, um, and overall sort of big picture product development, manufacturing, getting dovetailed. So some of those are further out there, but we really wanted to start very focused on the manufacturing floor, which is where the bulk of the problems are, but also where the opportunities for efficiency are.
Yeah.
And so over
Makes
time, you'll see those grow into the other areas. So
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I think it's so big that you have to like put your stake in the ground and start somewhere,
yeah,
even if it's like just very narrow, and then build on top of that. Makes
yep,
perfect sense.
yep.
All right.
Perfect. So, and again, like folks have seen these type of charts before, but just what are some of the problems that are out there, and why couldn't these big companies solve it? And again, a lot of these companies have evolved over time. So lots of stovepipe architectures, a lot of the equipment, has proprietary protocols. Some vendors are trying to charge companies for access to data or sell, packages on top. Um, and just some of them are just totally different languages. So the lack of interoperability, the inability to do things at scale is is almost impossible. But the biggest thing that we had to solve was that lower right-hand corner, was the lack of the OEM ownership of this problem. It felt like when we first started that everyone was waiting for somebody else to solve the problem. Why can't Siemens solve the problem? Why can't
Mm,
Fanuc and Rockwell get together? And this is not the equipment provider's issue. This is the industry basically defining what they need, and so that they can partner with their providers to make it happen. And so that's where we started. And USCAR
mhm.
gives us this environment where the companies can work together in a pre-competitive environment, work on things that are foundational, standards, research, and really is like, this is your problem to own. Either you own it or you
Mhm.
stop complaining about it. And so once we got the three OEMs together, then these other problems were pretty easy to start tackling.
Right,
Um,
because they obviously face a lot of these issues and
yeah,
in different forms or shapes. And
yeah,
I
and it was one of
especially,
the biggest dynamics we had to change because every company's trying to do their own thing. They're trying to do the right thing, but
Mhm.
this is an industry issue, and so they really had to agree that they were going to focus on the needs of the industry while balancing their own individual company requirements. Um, but it was really going through and it's like, how does this help our suppliers? What does this mean as we roll it out? So a different perspective and true leadership. I mean, that's first thing was them solving their own problem. Um,
Yeah, especially I'm
okay.
intrigued by the vendor lock-in aspect, right? Because that's something that everybody struggles with because every kind of factory, every system or every subsystem is kind of its own snowflake. You kind of like develop your own things, and over time, you're left with okay. And then also like the OE or the cloud providers, right? Typically, you try to stay with one, and then like you're kind of like locked into that ecosystem. One of
Yeah.
the things that, and we'll talk about it when the time is appropriate, HiveMQ enables is kind of like ensure that you're democratizing data and make your data available with any solution or any application based on what you want to do, as opposed to
Yeah.
having being locked into one ecosystem.
And again, I don't want to vilify the equipment folks. So oftentimes that vendor lock-in is an internal discussion within the companies. Powertrain loves one, so somebody likes another one, the stamping wants somebody else. So sometimes it becomes an excuse or a reason not to do the hard work. Um, but again, the efficiencies they need to achieve, the speed to market they're already committing to. all that stuff has to go away. And that what is really what's driving the need for this standard is um, is just get on with it. It's inevitable that we move beyond this lock-in or the stovepipes or the close, and it's just like um, it's go time.
All right.
Good. So again,
So,
we've been working on it for quite a while. I mean, early on, it was just, is there a standard out there? So we spent about 2 years benchmarking every possible protocol, other industries, talking with these different consortiums, talking with the equipment teams themselves, benchmarking other industries, and really kind of work through the point where there really wasn't a standard that met the needs of the automotive industry, and a lot of the standards are kind of focused on, again, the equipment providers, it works for them, or the network providers, but really wasn't built for smart manufacturing
hmm,
and the needs of smart manufacturers. And so it really came to a point where, as we did the benchmarking, all the equipment providers are like, just tell us what you want and we'll work together. But we can't do 5 things for Ford and 3 for GM,
right.
and right. And also, if you go down the path, you got to stick and own the thing, and not just throw it over the fence and go home. Um, and so we had a go no go decision at the end of 2021: is either put up or shut up, and either write the standard and get on with it, or quit, live with it. So we spent about a year and a half writing the standard, released it middle of 2023, and
Mm-hmm.
we spent about the last year socializing it within the OEMs and some of the larger tier ones, some of the larger equipment providers, really kind of getting everyone to understand what we're doing and why. Um, and it got back to some of the dynamics that we really needed to change. One of them, again, the leadership and the ownership of this, but also the 3 OEMs deferring to USCAR as the owner of the standard. And so that takes a lot of conversations internally to understand why, how does that work, how do we move forward. And so now for 2024, 2025, it's all about deploying, implementing, and maintaining. So,
Right. Absolutely,
yep,
absolutely. And I think the key thing, as you spoke, is like everybody gets to benefit from this. It's not just the OEMs benefit, but anybody in the value chain will benefit from this because now they'll be able to have some standard ways to interface with all of the other players as opposed to
yeah,
having
yeah.
different ways to do it. Yeah,
No, you're
absolutely.
really right. And again, we've taken a very pragmatic approach. It's not a
Hmm.
cliff event. It's not a my way or the highway. It's really meant to bring the industry together, all of our partners, all of our suppliers, get on the same page, right? Get to the standard because we're all in this together.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. By the way, if you have questions, please post it. We'll definitely try to address it towards the end. We'll have time at the end to address any questions.
Great, great.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, and again, we focus. It's funny, this can be a very technical discussion when you get in with with the experts from the different OEMs. But a lot of the value is not that we're making the controls engineer's life a little bit better, or we can help get a little bit of data out faster. It's the big stuff. It is compressing the product launch windows. It is enabling dynamic manufacturing and optimizing performance across the entire production system. Of course, it's focusing on equipment downtime and quality, but it's also doing all these smart manufacturing initiatives at scale. I mean, these folks
Right.
have hundreds of factories internally and thousands when you include their supply base. They need this going through the entire industry. And so it really, without, you can think about it like a river, trying to flow downstream, all these kind of blocks and rocks in the way. We need water to be just flowing through. We need data to be flowing through. We need machine to machine communication across all assets,
Right.
and really be able to push the envelope on performance, but also unleash all that data, for advanced analysis, for innovation, for again product launch, um, and uh, and so it was the kind of stuff we all talk about with smart manufacturing. But when you think about it from an industry level, it's a pretty big problem. And if you don't have just the basic communication from asset to asset to asset, um, you'll never be able to get this, beyond, kind of small scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so this is all about scale. And this is kind of the business case. And these are just snapshots from the OEM's, uh, you know, slide decks off their um, investment relations groups.
Right.
Is this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're committing to do.
Hmm.
Um, whether it is large global initiatives around, carbon net zero, or increasing production across all their production lines. The lower right corner is a great example of that the compressing the product launch windows.
Right. Yeah.
Ford is trying to launch vehicles 3 times faster,
Right.
freeze the engineering. So think about a vehicle in the early days of release. In the lower right, you're testing the vehicle, you're trying to dial in all the the bill of material, you're trying to make sure the performance is there. And those changes iterate from engineering out to manufacturing, out to the supply base and back. They want to freeze the bill of material within 2 months of the first vehicle rolling out, and then be at full production 100 days later. I mean, that's something that they've never been able to do,
Right.
and hold quality and performance and have the best vehicles that their customers are buying. And so
Absolutely.
that kind of pressure in the system says the feedback loop through the entire production process just has to go. There
Yeah.
is no room for one-offs and adapters and gateways and Rockwell and Siemens not talking together. That stuff's got to go. It's already baked into the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And now with the
And
push for EV and other players have come into the market, making it that much more complex, right? The
yeah, and
vehicle.
EV is a great example. Is they're trying to blend in whatever powertrain happens to be coming down the line,
Right.
but yet achieve greater efficiencies than what they had before they started EV.
Right. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and balance that and look good. And so when you look at it from a financial standpoint, um, the business case and the inefficiencies from your data communication is about 3 to 6% of your earnings, of your EBIT. And it's stuff where we one of the phrases we use, is like, crap rolls downhill and cost rolls back up. And so all this complexity that's burdening the cost of goods sold coming from the supply base, comes through a 1% warranty, supplier instability where they're having to work longer hours, use more express freight, um, you know, and again, you hear it in their investor relations calls, and just part cost, right? They're having to carry more costs, spend more time, um, again, trying to get the vehicles out at rate. And once those costs show up in the final assembly, the OEMs can't take those out. That's why they're contra costs. And then on top of that are the additional costs that the OEMs are carrying: more engineering, more labor, more overhead, longer delays in their
Right.
distribution and aftermarket. Um,
Right.
and so
Absolutely.
again, it's one of those where from being, whether it's a profitable company or surviving the ups and downs of the industry cycles, or be able to fund the innovation and investments in new technologies, um, we
Yeah.
yeah, so this is, and again, it's one where, um, down in the controls environment, they don't often talk about EBIT, right? They talk about how hard it is to, connect things together. So operationally, comparing MQTT and the new standard to say OPCUA,
Right.
we're giving them 5 times the speed, far
Right.
less manual effort, uh, far less complexity, and incredibly less expensive than. And again, our friends from the OPC Foundation, we love them to death, but paying $400 per connected device, uh, that adds up when you're in the auto industry.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
and again, Hive, you've got customers that start with the community version, just start free, right? Um, and invest as they go. But those operational costs and the inability to do things at scale is just a roadblock that can no longer sustain itself.
Yes.
And so this is really yeah. Go ahead, Robbie.
No, no, I was just going to say some of these are obvious, like the benefit, the financial benefits, for example, are obvious, but like the operational benefits are like very interesting to look at. And some of the other subtle, like maybe reduction in the warranty costs or supplier stability, instability, those things are interesting.
Yeah, and then
Interesting.
you can get it again. You think about the scale of the industry and the size of these big companies, and some of those just you got to take one extra person doing one extra, maintaining that one-off solution.
Mm-hmm.
That complexity adds up, slows down. It's
Right.
not just labor intensive, it's time intensive. But also think about it in the factory. It's like maintaining, a one-off production queue. You spend more time managing the one-offs than getting the whole system flowing. And that just adds up and they're costs that are really hard to take out once you've incurred them. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so again, one of the things we had to really agree to as a company, as an industry, is what are the best practices? And this is one
Mm-hmm.
where, again, HiveMQ just jumps off the page because you guys have been leading this for
Mm-hmm.
12 forever years,
Right.
helping companies kind of get to the same understanding, uh, which is moving towards a unified namespace, kind of that plug and play,
Mm-hmm.
build it once, reuse it millions of times over, bring in your legacy assets, your new assets, um, and really leverage the power of an MQTT based platform to get there. And uh, and so one of the things we had to work through as an industry team is, there's decisions we have to make as a company and the things we have to do at the industry level. And so part of the standard is to help companies, help our equipment providers really start moving towards this best practice architecture, even before the OEMs are there. Um, so that even the suppliers they know which way we're going. They kind of the equipment providers they know where we're going. Um, but this is best practice not just for automotive. This is pretty much across manufacturing worldwide. I mean, you guys see it every day with your customer base.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we can quickly explain like what this unified namespace is, and I can just throw in some definition, and Michael,
Yeah,
you
go
can
ahead.
also
Go
kind of
ahead.
like add on top of that, right? So I think like when you look at this diagram, right? So you have all of these different systems. Like to the right, you have your PLCs, programming logic controllers, devices that potentially could be smart because now you're adding some smart sensors and some edge products doing some operations. Each of it is doing its own thing. Imagine that in like an automotive factory environment. And then you have some other systems like SCADA, PLCs, and others, ERP, cloud. So all of these systems, both on the OT world, the operations technology world, and the IT world, doing its own thing, right? So unified namespace is kind of like a way to bring all this data into a single pane of glass and all of your business data, not just OT data or IT data. It could be other supply chain data and other things, and logically organizing it in a way so that you can see a snapshot of how your business is performing at any given point of time and organize it in a way that makes sense for you. If you wanted to organize it all by the sensors, all by certain data parameters, or by the site and by machines and the various aspects of that, I think that's kind of like where unified namespace really helps. And it also helps you kind of like interconnect all of these systems in a way that you don't have to like have spaghetti connections across the thing, right? And yeah, HiveMQ has been kind of like at the forefront of unified namespace, enabling customers to create that environment, which kind of like starts with data governance, right? Because if you want to do this across all of your factories, Michael,
Yeah.
you better make sure that you have a single kind of like way you organize the data, and there's a lot of data governance to it, and it's not easy. Companies are starting to do that, and they're making a lot of inroads on that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful. And again, a lot of the work around this standard is also to help some of these companies, supply base, who maybe, have been holding off or not quite sure, get everyone moving in that same direction. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, the goal is to prepare the data to
yep,
be able to do your advanced use cases, be it overall equipment efficiency or AI or digital twins, whatever that use case be,
yep,
you already have the data prepared,
yep,
normalized, contextualized, ready to go, as
yep,
opposed to moving it into like a data lake or a data swamp,
yeah,
and then figuring out what to do with it, and then that leads to more effort on your
yep,
part.
yep. Nice, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. And this is kind of again, starting to kind of build some of the business case, but also some of the challenges. And as we talked earlier, there's a lot of standards out there, a lot of
Right.
protocols. You have your IA95 model, which is kind of your reference architecture on the left. And there's lots of different standards. And this is even a discussion we had at the USCAR leadership. It's like,
Hmm.
why do we need this? Why can't we just pick one off the list, right? And so if you kind of click the next chart, um, the challenge from a smart manufacturer is you have to be able to drill down, drill through, connect all this together, connect all these different levels. And again, you may have a single device or a single sensor feeding multiple levels or multiple. And so this is one where, we talked about earlier, where, the equipment provider, they can't solve all this. Google can't solve all this. It really took the manufacturer, the OEMs, and the industry together to say, this is how we're going to connect it all together. This
Right,
is, and again, this also then creates the roadmap and the structure for all the players at those different layers to see
right,
how they plug in, but also um, understand why the USCAR 53 is so important.
right.
Is that again from a Ford, a GM, a Stellantis, or whomever, or a supplier, or if I'm a FANUC or a Siemens, it's like we need data from everywhere just to fulfill our task. It really was lacking having an overarching standard. And so that's where 53 had to come in and really nail it on the first iterations, really pull out that together, get them moving to that UNS approach so that the industry can start making the turn in the right direction.
Yeah. Awesome.
Good. And this is kind of the kind of putting it all together. And it's got to have one of these kind of charts. But the other thing we try to get people to understand is, this is more than just machine to machine communication. I've got a machining
Right.
cell, I've got an assembly line. Everything in the shop has data, whether it's your people and the spatial analytics, to your specs, your tools, the vehicles themselves. Um, all that has data, has sensors, has requirements, is used throughout the business. And so trying to do that point to point is just going to be impossible. And so that comes through the broker.
Hmm.
On the left, we didn't create a true UNS, but we started putting in a foundational architecture. And again, this is to help our equipment providers understand, here's what we're going to need, to support coming out of the controllers natively. Job related costs, non-job related, part related costs, machine costs. A good example might be at one of those smart torque wrenches, right? If you screw up the torque, that could be an issue for a particular part or a vehicle. It could also be the torque wrench itself may have a problem. It's broken or it's not performing, or it could be a non-job related. Maybe it's the compressed air isn't putting enough power into the wrench. But it also could be a training issue. It could be a tooling management issue. So that one sensor could be feeding multiple processes. And on the right is our industrial data communication framework. Native support. It's going to be MQTT preferred.
Right.
JSON for dynamic messaging.
Sure.
We're working with the equipment providers to provide tools. If your data model doesn't match, give us some tools that'll make it easy to map and gap, as well as moving people to the ISA 95 hierarchy, which again, some of the older equipment, older systems, don't include things like part or machine or you are very, very specific. Start moving them to that reference architecture as well, so that we can start building more standardized data assets. And
Yeah.
then those feed all your smart factory solutions, your AI, your simulations, your cyber,
Yep.
um, and again, feedback loop back down into the plant. Um, and so this is
Yeah.
really, and it's also this sense of we're trying to get data at scale worldwide. So if I've got a robot, in Europe, I need that data helping me train the model for the robot that's in Detroit, and vice versa. Um, and so without that standard, without everyone working towards that common standard, we'd never be able to get there. And that's kind of the issue that we talked about earlier. That's why all this just kind of evolved.
Yeah. And this is great, right? Because when I look at this, the first thing that pops in my mind is people, process, technology, right? So technology as a means to an end. Obviously, there are technologies already available, and a lot of people kind of gravitate towards it without like really thinking through what they need to achieve through that. And then they may have some initial success, but then it kind of like fizzles out. That's where IoT projects kind of like don't see the light of the day because you try to just jump in and use the technology or AI for that matter. I mean, jumping onto the AI bandwagon and or doing some projects like showing some cool things, but then like what about like long-term benefits out of it? What about scalability of it? Because you haven't thought through that. And I think that's kind of like where I think going back to your people, your process, your culture, understanding where you are and how you want to standardize on things, which standards would actually get you where, and then which tools will get you where. I mean, obviously, like there is, it's not like OPC versus MQTT in a lot of ways. I mean, you need OPC for machine-to-machine communication because it is pretty comprehensive. And then MQTT can be that bridge that takes that data and then brings that into your enterprise. And then unified namespace can be that tool that does all the mapping between your ISA 95 into your namespace, bringing all the business data together.
Yeah. Yeah, and you made a good point earlier talking about the data management and really kind of building from the bottom up, and it really puts a premium on really good data management and master data
Right.
management,
Absolutely.
and thinking through that as you go through. So go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and again, we kind of touched on this earlier, but again, as we're comparing the two, and again, OPC has its benefits,
Right.
right, but also has its detractors. Um, we really had to pick one as the primary protocol, and it gets even more of an issue as you start getting into mobile assets, spatial analytics, uh, vehicle to machine communication. That there's things that will never be in OPC um, and with the complexity that comes along with in cost, MQTT just made the most sense. Um, and again, some of our biggest suppliers, didn't even have OPC, native into their controllers yet. So, so ways to go. So kind of thinking about now that we've got it implemented, what does this mean? And USCAR, again, this consortium of the three OEMs, is now the owner of the standard. And doesn't mean we eliminate the OEM specific standards or the tier one supplier standards. No, it's really bridging that gap.
Mhm.
And you'll see when you go through the standard where it'll reference, defer to the OEM, um, or defer to a different standard. But USCAR owns the USCAR 53. The partners, the OEMs, they're responsible for driving the change, the actual cutover plan for their specific OEMs.
Right.
And I think it was the MTLC leader, the leadership team member from Ford, talked about in our launch event in April
Hmm.
that they're going to be using the purchasing power to drive the standard. It was another reason we needed a standard. Is
Right.
here's what your machines need to do,
Right.
and if they don't do them at a certain point, you can't even bid on work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, this is not your end all do all. Another focus area is pulling everyone together. From our
Hmm.
OEMs to our suppliers to our equipment providers to our industry groups, and really working together to make this standard work for the entire industry. And again, what do you need to help? Is it training? Is it support? Is it pilot projects? Is
Hmm.
it these kind of marketing and communication sessions where we just talk about what we're doing and why? Or literally, we need to talk to the technical experts who know how to do this and help us figure it out. That's really what
Right.
we're enabling through the US Car Group.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so, US Car doesn't normally do a lot of marketing, and so this is new for them as well. They're a research group. So again, we're using our website, we're using events like these to get the message out. We're doing a lot of small group presentations with companies and teams and one-on-one. So really, we're out here to get the word out, but also let us know what you need,
Hmm.
or if you're hearing, questions from your customers or your suppliers or your friends, let us know.
Yeah.
So we can help get either the questions answered or raise the questions to folks that can help answer the questions that you're asking for the first time. So,
Sure. Sure.
yeah. And doing lots of events. This is one from April. We had Department of Energy, we had SESME, we had it was hosted in the GM headquarters, and it was basically, we're live, get on with it, and get going. And
Right.
so yours truly sitting up there with Ford, GM, and Stellantis, just
Right.
saying, here's what we're doing and why. And again, these are the folks that it's their day job to make this happen in their companies.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and so,
Absolutely.
good deal. And we're also talking with lots of different industries, RV industry, um, IoT groups. This is CIO group up in Indiana.
Right.
They do bites and barrels. So, why not? Um, and just focusing on roadmaps and helping people understand this is not unique to automotive. Automotive is just the first industry to really come together with a
Yeah.
formal standard. Um, but this is applicable to really any manufacturing environment that I can see.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Makes absolute sense.
right.
Yeah. Sorry.
And then just a couple more slides. I think again, a lot of focus now that we're in on these pilots. Let's stop talking and doing the slideshow. Let's get in the shop. Let's do something with our suppliers. Let's do it. We're working with the OEMs on doing some OEM level, not demos, but true production pilots to
Right.
demonstrate the standard in action. A lot of our OEMs have already implemented it in different factories. So this is now tackling some of their areas that are not yet on board.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
great. And again, we'll connect anything and we'll take pictures and bring in our suppliers, but also just work together to make this happen. So
Yep.
um, and so look for more information. Go ahead. This is yours there.
Yeah, so just a lot of materials are available. Obviously, the case study is your LHP case study. It's very comprehensive. We have blogs available. We have data sheets that HiveMQ has created. Obviously, USCAR themselves have a lot of resources on the resource center. Last but not least, download the spec. I mean, the spec is available. Unlike other specs that are like 100 pages long, this is not that long. It's very, very straightforward. It's very focused on the communication aspect. It's very easy to understand. I think, and the reason why they made it simple is so that it's easily adoptable. It's kind of like that bridge, like Michael, you mentioned. And last but not least, just some interesting information about MQTT and how that comes together, UNS that we spoke about, and like Sparkplug as an add-on on top of MQTT. So just some resources that are available for you guys. Before we jump into questions, any final thoughts you wanted to add in, Michael?
No, I think this has been a great session, and we're doing more and more of these, just really helping get the word out, raising the awareness. One of my roles at USCAR is to kind of be the single point of contact. And whether you need to talk to me or some of the OEM reps, go ahead and reach out to me and we'll get you connected. But really
Okay.
encouraging folks, if you're not familiar with MQTT, to learn about it because it is, the right tool for folks.
Hmm.
Um, but also give it a shot.
Yeah.
And this is one we talked about the pressure in the system. We are in go mode now. This is not a strategy discussion anymore. It's an implementation discussion.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. And
yeah,
thank you, Michael. And all you need to know about MQTT is available in our essentials, which will take you from soup to nuts. Even if you don't know anything about it, by the time you complete these essentials, you'll be a pro. All right. With that, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so I can look at the questions here. There's a few that came through, and why don't we just jump into that?
sure.
And thank you again for all your questions. We'll start with one from Ray. I know, Ray, you asked a couple of questions. Maybe we'll start with the one that you asked first. When the operational analysis was done against OPCUA, where does the cost factor being driven from? Is a question from Ray.
So part of it is just the licensing fee. That's step one.
Mm-hmm.
But the other pieces are it's more complex and it is not universally adopted across the asset base.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that sort of patchwork deployment and cost, that requires extra labor to implement, but also extra labor and time to keep it updated or to switch. Or if you think about trying to plug in a new piece of equipment or retool your line, um, we got to go back and we got to update that. And it's also one where because the core equipment is not homogeneous, the Siemens versus Rockwell, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to integrate Siemens and Rockwell equipment into the same line, do you have two sets of controllers and two? So a lot of those costs are very hidden. They're kind of like we've been doing it forever, we're going to keep doing it.
Right.
But
Right.
when you look at it literally at scale and you look at it, what does it take to move fast? Those things start adding up.
Right. Makes sense.
Or they're just folks don't even want to go there because of the upfront costs and complexity. So they're not even going down the smart manufacturing path,
Right.
which is
Right.
where they're not getting the efficiency and kind of the opportunity cost as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you may have addressed the second question that Ray had. If that is licensing from device vendor, why would the device vendor not force licensing for features like MQTT to be embedded in the machines?
So it's actually from the OPCUA piece to
Right.
connect that. So OPC, within the machine base, that's running fine. It's when you're trying to take the data from and out
Right.
is when
That's
you're, and again, there are other platforms that charge a per device connection fee or Um,
Egress
sort of
fee.
like a user fee, right? Kind of a thing,
Right.
or
Right.
a data fee, or um, versus just being able to connect natively to a
Hmm.
device.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And
and
plus,
so, yeah,
what I've also seen is that OPC the implementation may differ between different vendors, between
yep,
Siemens and Rockwell or others. They have their own
yep,
kind of like implementation, so it may not always interrupt with each other.
yep,
Whereas MQTT is standard, right? If you're part of the ecosystem, if you're a client, you can talk to any broker and vice versa. Yeah. There's one last question from Ray. We will just do ask that question as well. Does the standard provide provisions to support command responses or feedback to the automated processes that the machines are part of?
yes, it does. And again, I think you go through the spec, you'll see we try to write as much of that in. Um, what I would also say is if you do see issues or there's more items to add, again, the standard is never done. We're always adding more
Hmm.
content or clarifying, or we need to change the verbiage. So one of the asks in these type of sessions is to get more eyeballs on the standard. And we've had an update already where one of the equipment vendors said, the way you word that particular phrase, it's kind of confusing. If you have a
Hmm.
master PLC running off with a bunch of smaller PLCs, which one controls the start and stop date or start and stop time or things
Right.
like that? And it
Right.
wasn't real
Right.
clear.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds good.
we try to incorporate that, but again, it may be if you see it, we need to change it. Those are the kind of feedback. And again, it's part of the standards development and maintenance process for any standard.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I know, Ray, we answered all your questions, but if you have any further questions, you can. Oh, there. Okay. So it looks like he's happy. Thank you again. But please keep any other questions coming because this is not a trivial topic and it's very complex. And I'm sure you'll have more questions after the fact. So please feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to answer those questions. All right. Jim Black had a question around the specification mentions images and waveform, but
Yes.
also specifies JSON. JSON does not support non-text data. Can you clarify how we'll send frequent waveform data efficiently, not in text?
That was actually a pretty good discussion we had
Hmm.
and part of it is some things are ready to be a standard and some aren't. And so we had a lot of discussion around waveform or should we, you know, state a preferred file type. And those are the things that we still need to talk through as a group, but also as an industry, if there is a form. So the folks are using MQTT to move waveform, move video, move vision systems. There's a way to do it in a technique. Um, but it's probably an area where is there a preferred way across that everyone agrees to or not, or it's probably something we still need to decide if we want to standardize.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and again, sometimes it might not be the protocol itself. It might be a network issue, or it could
Right.
be you know, uh, how you structure the actual file. So, but we do recognize that waveform are critical because you have to have the entire wave in order to get the value from, that particular sensor or that particular operation. And so that's one of those where you may have to have a workaround, that's outside the standard to complete the operation or do something locally in your specs, if you've got a particular, operation that needs it.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, you can contact us. I think we provided our email addresses here, but if you can respond to the invite that you got, and obviously we'll make sure that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we have you reach directly back to Michael or myself based on what questions you might have for sure. Absolutely. Here is other some interesting questions that came through as well. One is like, yeah, that's great that we are doing USCAR 53. That's fantastic. Can you actually provide some examples of deployments thus far?
We've, talking with our OEM team, we've already deployed across 38 different facilities.
Hmm.
Uh, this is
Wow.
running. Um, and again, we're talking with the Europe teams, South America teams, global teams, talking with one of the OEMs, their European group is 90% in line with USCAR. So one of the teams talked about they're on in 6 different plants, more than 2,000 devices, 700,000 messages per hour, 500 service instances, 2.5 million requests per day.
Wow.
Um, Saw one coming through that they're moving full video and full vision system data, um, through the broker. Um,
Yeah.
so it isn't something we just decided on. Actually, as we wrote the standard, we kind of like, well, what are you guys already doing? And most of them had already been working on MQTT-based solutions for quite a while. The standard is really formalizing that and giving the best of the best.
Yeah. Yeah, this is interesting, right? And it's really future looking because typically when you create an architecture, you don't think about like scale from day one, right? But then the reality is that if you look at the big automotive manufacturing plants, they are humongous, right? So even if you start small, tomorrow you have to think about scale. You have to think about reliability. And this is where I think MQTT in general and HiveMQ specifically really comes in, right? Because we are all about enterprise grade solutions, which is high scalability. We have benchmarked like 200 million concurrent connections. Not that you need the 200 million concurrent connections for manufacturing use cases, but like that's the level that we can go, right? And provide that high availability, ensuring that you don't really, if you have downtime for whatever reason, you're able to bring it up immediately so that like you're not, your production is not affected, right? Providing that high level of security. And those are the things that the reasons why companies prefer HiveMQ broker because we kind of like stand behind that and provide that enterprise grade functionality.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. That was really good.
Great.
Just from a unified namespace perspective, right? I mean, is USCAR creating a single unified namespace, or is that like multiple instances?
So we actually intentionally are not.
Hmm.
A couple reasons. One, because this is the first release, if we tried to jump to a unified namespace at the industry level,
Hmm.
it would have been too big of a jump for our
Right.
suppliers and folks. But also a UNS is really typically very unique to that manufacturer.
Hmm.
How they're organized,
Exactly.
their company's laid out, their priorities. So we were actually trying not to because we didn't
Hmm.
want to put handcuffs on these companies on, you know, getting the right, communication, but also running the company they need to run. So
Right.
what we did do by referencing the IA 95 hierarchy, by starting to put
Absolutely.
in kind of the framework of an architecture, is sort of kind of lay the track down, for the train to go down.
Yep.
Um, But also at the industry level, there is no forcing function. No one wants to analyze all the manufacturing data off of every factory, 4G.
Sure.
No one's asking for it.
Right.
And so why
Right.
waste our time trying to create something like that, which is hard to do even on, at a small company, not much less an industry. So it was
Right.
counterproductive to the goals of the standard, but really
Hmm.
not a requirement at an industry level yet.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and if it, but also sort of leading the industry towards that. If it ever does become a requirement, because the industry is moving there, then it's more achievable to do a UNS 5 years from now or whenever, when
Right.
more of the groups are already maturing their own.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point that you brought up, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be that big bang approach when it comes to unified namespace. You can actually have a very, very simple unified namespace for things that really matter, and you can easily build on top of that, right?
Yeah,
And that could be like a working unified namespace, so to speak, because your business needs doesn't stay static. But today your business needs are this, but tomorrow your business needs are different, and your unified namespace needs to be adaptable to that. Yeah, makes
yeah. We
makes
talk
absolute
about it,
sense.
it's kind of like turning the Queen Mary in the Long Beach Harbor. You can't turn the industry that fast.
Right.
You might just knock a few waves off. And so we really have to, at an industry, kind of set the direction. Leadership standard has to be specific enough so people can implement, but
Right.
also have enough flexibility and time to absorb and adapt and move along.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we had to take a long-term perspective as well
Right.
of, what goes into release one, release two, release three,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to allow the industry to absorb this and to get the momentum built up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we have 5 more minutes. So let's take a few more questions and then we'll kind of like wrap it up here. One question that came specific to MQTT and unified namespace is that, I mean, we're talking about like connecting different systems, and not all of these systems actually supports MQTT, right?
yep.
Both on the OT operations technology side and on the IT side of things. So how do you manage that in terms of bringing the data or converting it to MQTT? One of the things that we try to do is like we have this edge gateway that can talk to different systems on your factory floor over, say, OPC for example, or Modbus or Siemens PLC, Siemens S7, or Allen Bradley, common protocols that we encounter. And we are able to take that and convert that to MQTT and bring the data into the unified namespace. And on the IT side of things, it's not as simple. Like obviously, some of the ERP providers do have MQTT like clients. Like for example, SAP has that, and a couple of others have that. For those that don't have that, using kind of like API-based ingestions or creating what we call extensions, we have SDKs based on our platform, and then we can create like custom extensions. Like say, for example, to talk to Azure or AWS or Google using their PubSub capability or whatever capability that they provide, and then like or Snowflake for that matter. So that's how we kind of like bring in the ingress and egress out of in and out of the unified namespace. All right.
Yeah,
I
and
do
I
have,
would I
yes,
would
please.
say on that, part of the standard is to let everyone know where we're going.
Oh yeah.
And so again, a lot of the equipment providers don't have MQTT. Now we can work together on, this is the standard. How do we implement? When do we implement?
Right.
At what version? uh, you know, and the same thing on the IT side. If there are, large scale systems out there that don't connect seamlessly,
Yeah.
yeah, now they know they need to, or they might get replaced, or because we need all that data flowing through the system, and we
Yes.
can't have these one-offs that cause a miss or add extra complexity, or it just needs to work. You think about your laptop, right? You just plug in the
It
USB, right? It just works,
just works. Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's what we want and need, and that's what the industry is going to get if it takes, playing the purchasing game. But really, we wanted to give everyone the direction we're going and allow them now the ability to build their own plans,
Yeah.
work with the OEMs, industry. Okay, kind of here's where we're at. Kind of, does that make sense? And then work to plan versus work to exception.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was another question that came in about HiveMQ mentions Sparkplug B as the best in class. As the IIoT software specification, does HiveMQ plan on supporting SAE 53 OOTB like Sparkplug B? Now, SAE 53, is that like this 53 same thing or
Yeah,
it's
that's us.
different?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think like Sparkplug is just a data framework on top of MQTT. So yes, from that by that token, yes, absolutely. Sparkplug B is planning to support SAE 53 for sure. But then we recognize that there are other data frameworks out there that we need to be flexible. So MQTT being that like the transport layer or message transport layer, we can support any data framework on top of that, and Sparkplug B being one of it for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Any closing thoughts from me, Michael? I know we have a minute.
No, this has been great. And again, I appreciate the great questions. And again, appreciate Ravi, you and the HiveMQ folks allowing me to come in and kind of
Hmm.
help raise the awareness. But again, you're a leader in the space
Sure.
as well. So always good time to hang out with
Great.
you
Awesome.
and share what we're doing. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, I think we are up top of the hour. Thank you so much for joining, folks. Much appreciated. Obviously, if you have more questions, you can always reach back to us. Happy to help. This recording will be available later this week, and let's have those conversations. Let's get ahead of the curve when it comes to USCAR 53 and help each other out. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye bye.
thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. Bye.